Okay, so let's say that you're in need of a new smartphone and you got around $500 to spend. No doubt these two phones are going to be on your radar. The very new Google Pixel 6a and the established cult favorite, the new 2022 iPhone SE. Both of these devices bring a lot to the table, and I thought I'd put a comparison review together to help you get a better understanding of which device might be better for you. So first, let's talk about physical design and form factor because these are quite different phones. Size is going to be the most notable difference, as you can see. The Pixel 6a follows more of the current trend when it comes to dimensions with this mid-size approach, which makes the phone comfortable to hold and operate with one hand, but still provides an immersive 6.1-inch display. The display has an edge-to-edge design, again, much more up to date with current trends, and overall the design very much mirrors the look and feel of the flagship Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, making for good continuity across Google's offerings. On the other hand, the 2022 iPhone SE from a dimension standpoint is something I would classify as unusually small for today's standards. Because it's still using the rather dated design of the iPhone 8, it still has the chunky forehead and chin and physical home button, giving users only a 4.7-inch display. Now, where the iPhone SE has a leg up in terms of design is build quality. Despite looking old, the use of glass on the front and back with the color matched aluminum frame underscores Apple's commitment to quality, and no doubt it's a beautifully finished device. The Pixel 6a also brings a lot to the table when it comes to build, but a notable difference here is that it does have a plastic back. It sounds a lot more negative than it actually is because the phone still looks and feels great, especially with this aluminum frame. They both come with IP67 dust and water resistance certifications, and they both sadly lack headphone jacks, but aside from those two similarities, these two are very different phones when it comes to design. Personally, I do prefer the Pixel 6a in this category. Google really stepped it up in terms of making some improvements to the look and feel of their phones, and it's great to see that translated on their newest device. And look, I don't have a problem with the small size of the iPhone SE, I really don't. If y'all follow the channel at all, you'll know that I recently switched the iPhone 13 mini as my main phone, which is actually smaller in dimensions than the SE. My main beef with the phone is the small display. It's not horrible, but it does make viewing certain content not as engaging, mainly because of these chunky bezels. And straight up, it looks and feels like I'm using a pretty dated device. And let's peel the onion a little bit more on the displays, and let's start with the Pixel 6a. Google equipped this phone with a 6.1-inch OLED panel that comes in at a full HD plus resolution, and it's a solid display. Content comes off sharp, you get full saturated colors, you get great contrast with those inky blacks, and though I do wish it got a little bit brighter, it does support HDR content. You also get a great screen to body ratio with just this hole punch cutout at the top for the front facing camera, and it makes things like watching videos and playing games really enjoyable. Now, it does only clock in at a 60Hz refresh rate, so you're not going to get that silky smooth UI navigation experience you'll get on phones that have higher refresh rates, but it'll be business as usual if you're already on a device using a 60Hz panel, and it still makes for a great overall user experience. Now, I know I just poo-pooed the size of the display on the iPhone SE, and I wish there was something here that I could say to help make up for it, but unfortunately, it only gets worse. And I say that because this phone is using a very dated sub 1080p LCD panel that is almost shocking to say in mid 2022. Now, I do defend it in saying that it looks fine, things are still sharp, and there's no major noticeable issues with the resolution. It's also capped at 60Hz when it comes to refresh rate, but I will say that the SE is a little less jittery when it comes to UI navigation, but that has more to do with the efficiency of iOS than it does with the display itself. And really, when it comes down to it, when compared to what's on the Pixel 6a, it's in my opinion beat in virtually every way. Now let's talk about features and performance, and let's start with the Pixel 6a because this is the area in which the phone has seen the most gains. And I say that because historically, Google has used pretty in-your-face third-party mid-tier processors in their A line of Pixels. So it's a pretty significant change in direction given that the Pixel 6a is equipped with Google's in-house Tensor chip, the powerful processor that's powering the flagship Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. And with this, the 6a can take advantage of some intense software features that requires a lot of heavy lifting. For example, you have Google's Live Translator that can instantly transcribe your audio in one language to another, which is pretty incredible. You also have access to Google's Magic Eraser that can very quickly and quite accurately remove artifacts from your photos, and it works really well. Now, Apple has always tried to differentiate itself by equipping all of their iPhones regardless of price with their class-leading in-house processors, and it's no different for the third generation iPhone SE. This phone may look and feel old, but it's rocking the beastly A15 Bionic chip, making this an absolute powerhouse of a device. So you get access to some of iOS's newest features such as live text. You could use the SE's camera to lift and digitize any text that gets into the frame almost in an instant, which is no easy feat. And mostly you get sound peace of mind knowing that with a processor this strong, the SE will be able to last you quite a long time without any major issues. Now when it comes to security, it's kind of split here. Both use fingerprint scanners as their biometric security measures, and given that the SE is using a dated design, it correspondingly also uses its dated Touch ID technology. Now it may be old, but dude, Touch ID still works really well. It's extremely straightforward to use as it's baked into the home button, and it gives you that really precise haptic feedback when you authenticate. The Pixel 6a on the other hand has an in-display fingerprint reader that immediately gives it points as it allows the phone not to have an awful looking forehead or chin, or any button on the back, making for a much cleaner and modern look. The issue with it comes down to reliability and speed. There have been cases in which people were able to unlock the Pixel 6a with fingerprints that were not registered, and given that this is an optical sensor, it would have been way better if it could authenticate faster. Now when it comes to battery life, again, there's a clear winner, and it's the Pixel 6a. Not only is it equipped with a much larger physical battery than the SE, Google seems to have found some efficiencies with Tensor since putting it into their phones, and even though it's only been a few weeks, the Pixel 6a's battery life is better than what's on the Pixel 6 Pro. On the other side of that coin, I've always said that one of the main drawbacks to going with the SE is going to be battery life. The dated design doesn't allow for a larger battery, and even though Apple is the king of maximizing efficiency, there are going to be limits. And look, the SE can get you through a full day of light to moderate use without any issues, but if you watch a lot of TikTok and use Google Maps all the time, you are going to need a charger handy throughout the day. Again, it's not something that I would classify as horrible, but it's pretty behind to what the Pixel 6a brings to the table. But arguably the most important area of performance for both the Pixel 6a and the iPhone SE is going to be camera quality, and dude, neither of these phones disappoint. Now when it comes to hardware, it's important to note that the Pixel 6a does come with more cameras overall. You got a primary wide-angle camera and an ultra-wide in the back, while the iPhone SE just has a single wide-angle camera on the rear. They're both using older sensors that have been used in previous iterations of their lineup, but what's important is that they can both leverage their respective computational photography tricks, making the photos that come out of the 6a and the SE the best at this price point, and it's by a far margin. They both come out sharp and vibrant. The dynamic range that both of these phones are able to produce is amazing, and I would say the main difference here comes down to image processing and color. The Pixel has a very distinct look that has more contrast and saturated colors. I've said this before, but Google makes it so you almost never have to do any editing to a photo after it's been shot. Its goal is to give you a stylized image as soon as you press the shutter button, but because of that, there are times where pictures come out overly processed and do look a bit artificial. The iPhone SE, on the other hand, provides users with some of the most natural looking still images coming out of any phone. It's got great color accuracy and is a tad sharper than what's coming out of the Pixel. I also think it does a little bit better with skin tones, and I like the way it processes portrait shots better. It's a bit more accurate with edge detection and more real to life with the artificial background blur. So when it comes to photos, it really comes down to preference. Both of these phones do great. You're not going to be disappointed by either, but when it comes to video, the iPhone SE starts to make a comeback. The 4K video coming out of this tiny phone is probably the greatest illustration of don't judge a book by its cover because it's absolutely extraordinary. Footage is sharp, it does really well with colors, and the dynamic range is outstanding. It can also shoot in 24, 25, 30, or 60 frames per second, which is by far the most options available on any mobile device, and what can I say, other than the video quality Apple is able to give the iPhones is truly unmatched. And look, that's not to say that the 4K video coming out of the Pixel 6a is bad. I'm actually kind of impressed by it as it's also really sharp and does pretty decent with dynamic range. It is limited to either 30 or 60 frames per second, and the color science just isn't at the same level of what the iPhone brings to the table. Again, it's not to suggest anything is wrong here, it's actually pretty commensurate to the quality of the more expensive Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, but it's gonna be a while before it can compete with the iPhone. So brass tacks, when it comes down to which phone is better, despite that last win there, I think the answer is pretty obvious. The Pixel 6a to me is just fundamentally a better phone overall that gives you way more in terms of value. You get a better form factor, better display, better battery life, a powerful processor, and some of the best camera quality in the market today. And overall, it's great seeing Google take intentional steps of beefing up their A lineup of devices, and you're getting a ton here for $449. Now, the iPhone SE is still a great phone, don't get me wrong. It's gonna be great for those who are looking for familiarity if you're using an older device, and it has the power to be future-proof for a very long time. My main issue with the SE has always been the lack of innovation. It's been the same for so long, and I'm honestly kind of sad that Apple doesn't try to make the SE a little bit more special. But hey, that's just me, and I want to know what you guys think. Which phone do you guys think is better? The new Pixel 6a or the new iPhone SE? Curious to get your thoughts. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. Check out the dedicated reviews of the 6a and the SE here if you're interested, and I'll see you guys in the next one.